Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second webinar for the spring semester at the School of Information Studies, Syracuse University. I'm JD Ross. I'm the Communications Director here at the iSchool, and I'm going to be the host for today's webinar. Today, sitting right here next to me is Associate Professor Lee McKnight, and he's going to be taking us through the applications of blockchain technology. Now, it's Valentine's Day here, and I brought some candy in here with me to share with the folks helping to run this webinar and behind the scenes, and you too, Lee, you'll get some candy too, and maybe after the webinar. This is Reese's candy, and if you can remember, maybe a while back, their tagline used to be, "Two great tastes that taste great together," the chocolate and the peanut butter. And I think that Professor McKnight today in his webinar is going to share some information about two other things that go great together, although not edible. Blockchain technology and the Internet of Things. If you've heard about blockchain technology, you've almost always, up to this point, heard it in the context of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And we're not here to tell you how to get rich off of Bitcoin today. But Lee is going to take us beyond Bitcoin mania. His research at the iSchool has always been focused on leading edge technologies, and blockchain is certainly one of those. He's been teaching a class on blockchain management here, and he's in his second semester teaching that class. It's been very popular. And I'm going to turn it now over to Lee and let him share some of his blockchain knowledge with you. So without further ado, please welcome Professor Lee McKnight.
Thank you very much, JD. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you listening in. I look forward to interacting with you over the course of the hour. For the change in slides, do I do it or does this automatically?
You'll do it. Yep.
Very
there
good.
You go. That answers your question.
We have it all set. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. We really look forward to the interaction and the discussion. At the end of the session, we'll have about 10-15 minutes, and we look forward to your questions, comments, suggestions on talking about after cryptocurrency. So beyond cryptocurrency, blockchaining the Internet of Things. The opening slide here, that's not the way cryptocurrencies are mined or mined in Mordor. This is a volcano in Goma, Democratic Republic of Congo, which ties in actually to blockchaining the Internet of Things, as you'll understand better by the end of this discussion. Next. So today we'll be introducing the topic. I always like to start off with a couple jokes, and I have some good, well, you'll see what you think of them on the next slide. After that, we'll be reviewing both some basic information on cryptocurrencies and blockchain, so we're all up to speed on what this is all about and where it stands today, this new technology and opportunity. And then in the second half, we'll be going into blockchaining the Internet of Things, and its potential applications, new applications, and new business models. And then we'll conclude, as already mentioned, with a discussion with all of you, which I look forward to. So this Internet of Ransomware Things cartoon has a number of different jokes in it, but the ones that are relevant for us today particularly are one where it's showing a sort of a compromised washer saying, "Your dirty dishes can wait, I'm busy mining Bitcoins." And another one with the smoke detector that says to you, this is assuming it's an Internet of Things house infected with all kinds of malware, but it says 30 bucks in Bitcoin, or I just might let you sleep through the next time I smell smoke. And then finally, I'm not going to go through all these jokes, but the one I particularly appreciate is the broom saying, "Send me $25. I'll tell everyone on your social network that you were stupid enough to buy an internet-connected broom." Okay, so just because it's possible to connect everything to the internet, maybe it's not always a good idea, and maybe there's that everybody should be aware of, and maybe blockchain has a role to play in preventing these kind of nightmare scenarios that are unfortunately all too real. Next slide, please. So here's the basic facts that everybody, I guess, needs to know or should be aware of today. As of this morning, as of an hour ago, there are 1,530 cryptocurrencies in existence. You can keep track of the daily count by checking with that link I provide there from CoinMarketCap. The fact is, my students in blockchain management this semester could create multiple cryptocurrencies if that was what they chose to do. but likely they're going to be looking at creating companies that take advantage of blockchain technology with or without a cryptocurrency, and you'll understand that better as we go further into this. So one more thing to be aware of, we say cryptocurrency, but it's not a currency. Next slide. Okay, so the facts, and these are just, you know, this is a straight, everybody, a lot of people talk about this stuff and they pretend things are different than they are. But the truth is the IRS, the Communities Futures Trading Commission, New York State do not define Bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies as currencies today. They're commodities and regulated as such and taxed as such. And anybody that's telling you different is either scamming you or ignorant. And there's a lot of that in the space. So I want to be warning people to watch out for people telling you things that are just not true. One thing also to be aware of, and this goes along with being a commodity, is guess what's a characteristic of commodity prices? Are they swing up and down? And guess you all been reading the news, seeing how these cryptocurrency / crypto commodity prices have been swinging like any other commodity. So the ultimately comes down to how is the supply and what is the demand for cryptocurrencies. And I'm just saying it's very easy, relatively speaking, to create a new currency or cryptocurrency which has some function, but whether it's really valuable, whether there's a demand for it or not, I suspect many of those 1,500 do not have any real sustainable business model or demand for the long run, but that's something people should go into rather than just assuming there's somehow a limit or scarcity to cryptocurrencies. Next slide. Having said that, there is a lot of money already, market capitalization around cryptocurrencies. I'm showing the list of the top 11 by capitalization, again, as of 2 days ago when we put this table together. So obviously Bitcoin with over 140, around 150 billion, it goes up and down. It's been much more than that. In December, it was much less than that a year ago. And on to Ethereum, number 2, on down through NEM or NEM, which is still over right around a $5 billion market capitalization. So we're not, this is not a trivial space. There's 300, 400, 500 billion in that range up and down, and invested into cryptocurrencies or / blockchain technologies at the moment. That's actually only part of the investment, but there's a lot of money there. Next slide, please. Okay, so we now have the basics, like, you know, there's a lot of them, you know, there's some that are worth a lot of money right now, and now it's like, why, what does it, not really, or just a cryptocurrency, what is it? So inside cryptocurrencies is the blockchain, which is the real innovation. This is a new distributed ledger technology, which creates a transaction record that underpins Bitcoin and all most other cryptocurrencies. In some ways, it's like a spreadsheet or a database, except, and this is a big exception, it's verifiably true record of all transactions. Next slide. So the term blockchain, it combines these two aspects of the distributed ledger technology, the secure auto verification mechanism that creates and can maintain trust on a chain. And so for each digital record, it's timestamped, verified, and linked. There is a thread or a block which can be either open, so like Bitcoin, it's an open public blockchain, or it could be a closed or private set of users. So if you're using this in an industry supply chain, you maybe don't want everybody to see all the information, and that's like a design option between having the blockchain technology can work either way. Next slide. Okay, so the key characteristic of this blockchain technology and why it's distinct from other databases or other forms of records is that you can't be erased. It's immutable. So I'm showing a stone ledger. It's obviously more portable, having it all digital, but it's basically, it's really, trying to crack a blockchain ledger is like very, very difficult, and therefore because it can be trusted, and can't be erased, it becomes a way to reduce the role of intermediaries in supply chain, which should, in theory, over time, reduce transaction costs, whether for financial markets or in other areas in which having trust between multiple parties would be of value, or where there's inefficiencies or friction in the market, where there's fraud. This is a way to eliminate some of that. Next slide. Okay, so inside blockchain, going deeper in, we have smart contracts, which is really, this is how new this is. The blockchain itself is pretty recent. Smart contracts are from just invented a couple years ago, but this is a automated software program that works between different parties on the blockchain, which can then sort of negotiate and agree or disagree that saying this is actually a fraud transaction that's trying to be entered into the record, and the distributed system can sort of automatically reject this from its not permitted to enter. So that's how Bitcoin can work, where it's an anonymous distributed ledger, but it can't be falsified because of its math. Okay, so we see that because of the value of that, it has gone up tremendously, having this capability, but it also creates some new vulnerabilities and threats because while the blockchain itself can't be cracked, a cryptocurrency exchange is no more secure than any other information system. And guess what? They're not that secure. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, $500 million was stolen out of one in Japan. So just as the quote says, the cryptocurrency may be secure, but if the crypto exchange is not, you can still have serious problems. So, okay, now we get, why are cryptocurrency exchanges being robbed? And from the first or only one, there's been many of them. There were ones that attacked in South Korea just in December, which they had to shut down the largest there. There was one in Japan that the Mt. Gox was shut down in 2014. So cryptocurrency exchanges are frequently a point of attack for the obvious reason is that's where there's a lot of investment and maybe not very good information security practices, making it possible to steal large sums from one point. So this gets us, this example sort of ties together some of the things you hear around anonymity in blockchain. So while the Bitcoin protocol may be anonymous, you know, if you're moving more than $10,000, that would be money laundering that you'd be legally required to report. In this example, let's walk through that case from 2 weeks ago. NEM Foundation with its NEM, one more second, sorry, well, let me stay there one more second. That the NEM Foundation knows, has a full, quote unquote, full account of all of the loss of these coins, these $500 million, but it can't recover them. On the other hand, the thieves can't really move them very easily because they're sort of being tracked at the same time. So you can say, yeah, it's anonymous, but it's not that anonymous at the same time. Next slide. Okay, so we've sort of gone through the basics of cryptocurrency, and we're moving into this in blockchain, and we're moving into the Internet of Things discussion now that we have a full understanding of some of the capabilities of blockchain, creating this trusted distributed record system. Okay, so now in the Internet of Things space, when we say Internet of Things, we usually think about hardware or a thing, right? That's what it sounds like, Internet of Things, devices. So it could be a sensor, it could be a camera, it could be a monitor, it could be all kinds of industrial systems. That's true, those are part of the Internet of Things, but in addition, to connect or reach them or to share information, you need to have a network or multiple networks, whether it's Wi-Fi or like an industrial control system, or LoRa, which is a long-range, wide area, low-power Internet of Things network technology that we'll talk more about in a second, or it could be the satellite. So some form of networking. In addition, cloud services are sort of a core part of the architecture, meaning how do you aggregate and monitor many, many different things in many, many different locations. That's through the cloud. So software-defined computing, storage, network, data centers, development operations, and everything are all tied together and tie together the Internet of Things. Software as well is another distinct component which can be applied and built in, whether it's usually maybe stored in the cloud, but it could also be on distributed devices and resources. So a range of different processes, including artificial intelligence capabilities as well as cloud capabilities for automation, are all tied together. Now here in Syracuse, we have our own Syracuse Things Network up and running. That's a picture of the antenna on the Barclay Damon Tower downtown. My colleague Chris Ador, former CIO of Syracuse University, and my colleague Cameron Gale are joining me in an event coming up in April, where we'll be talking more about Internet of Things and its capabilities over as it grows. And this is something where, again, I guess maybe we'll webcast that too, why not, or at least some of it. We've done this in the past, and we'll include demonstrations of blockchain technologies and projects of my students, as well as IoT projects that my students and others and community entrepreneurs are working on. So there's now over this low-raw Internet of Things network is in over 90 countries and with over 500 cities. It just had its first technical conference. This is just 3 years after a Kickstarter. You have a Internet of Things global network with over 25,000 people, entrepreneurs, developers, all working together, exploring new capabilities of the Internet of Things. I mention that it doesn't cost anything to join onto this blockchain network or this unblockchain network. This is just anybody can link anything to this particular Internet of Things network. Now, these same capabilities would be in many industrial cases you wouldn't want if you're the utility or the grid to just have everybody getting onto your control network for the grid. And now we get to the problem. The problem is today, in fact, many of the utility grids are using the open public internet just like everybody else, and they have become susceptible to the same kinds of threats and vulnerabilities as everybody else on every kind of system. So without, if we don't make things different for the Internet of Things going forward, there may be many new problems. So I just want to highlight again, this is a great time for experimentation, for entrepreneurs, for students to start playing with this, and those who are within can come to Syracuse or join us remotely. Then this would be a great opportunity to learn more beyond what we can cover in this webinar and see more of the cool things that our wonderful Syracuse University students have been creating this semester in my blockchain management class, as well in Chris Ador's Internet of Things oriented course. Next slide. Okay, now we get to the however. On the other hand, so on the one hand, it's great, it's wonderful, but Internet security is bad, like real bad, like incredibly bad, like a disaster. With basically, this is from last year. This is from Hewlett Packard, so this is not like, it's not me just saying this. It's Hewlett Packard's our study from 2017 saying 84% of Internet of Things adopters have had a security breach. And I will say the 15% are too close to realize they have been breached. That's my opinion and suggestion, that it's likely closer to 99% that have a breach, but the 15% are the ones that have the real problem because they don't even know it yet. So the current generation, even if it's 84% or 99%, we can debate that, but the fact is current generation IoT systems are not acceptable. They're dangerous, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, there's lots of flaws, and we can do better in many different ways. We teach our students here how to do it, but big companies and the government's agencies also recognize some of these problems, as I'm showing in just a second. So this is again, this is no joke. Just because you have a perfectly secure blockchain, you tie it to insecure Internet of Things, and your whole, just like the NEM case, everything is stolen, everything's controlled because you have one secure piece that provides a perfect funnel for the hackers and the thieves into the rest of your enterprise. Next slide. Okay, if I haven't got you worried yet, this is all true. This slide is true. The largest pacemaker maker, St. Jude's, which was in a $25 billion buyout merger campaign in 2016, and was also at that time subject to a review of the security practices of its pacemakers. That was done by Muddy Waters, the short sellers, whose business is like finding companies that are sloppy or doing something wrong, doing a study, reporting on it, and having already bet on the stock going down because of the dangerous or fraudulent practice, making a big profit. So what Muddy Waters did, and this is, so people like me and others in the industry have known for years that medical devices were not secure. In fact, many of them never tried to be secure, arguing, hey, it's more important that any doctor can try to help revive somebody. If somebody's having a problem with their pacemaker, it's more important that everybody can get into it on some security, because it's unlikely there will be a lot of hackers out there attacking pacemakers, right? Well, Dick Cheney, vice president, was basically, he was the first one where having that assumption that nobody would try to do anything to his heart was taken as not a safe assumption. So he had his doctors, his IT staff upgraded his pacemaker years ago to make sure that it couldn't be a subject of a remote attack. So like I say, this is not news, but the fact is now Muddy Waters did a study and they showed, what I'm saying is these results are technically sound. There's no question this is true, even though the Federal Food and Drug Administration and St. Jude Pace denied it. If you're in the space, you know that's not really, that this is accurate. That from 3 meters away, so 10 feet away, hackers were able to disable or deliver a shock to a pacemaker. From 12 meters, so about 36 feet, around 40 feet, you could compromise it if you had an antenna. And if you had an upgraded system with software-defined radio, you could do it from 100 feet away, meaning it could be out of sight and you could be messing with people's hearts. Okay, that drove down the price of St. Jude stock by 10% in a day, and Muddy Waters got its big profit. Now they're subject to a lawsuit from St. Jude's after the merger, and the FDA, like I said, the FDA denied this, but okay, so who's correct? Do you believe St. Jude's or the FDA? Or do you the FDA a year later when they quietly recalled over 1 million pacemakers? Okay, so you can understand, what does it mean if you're recalling a pacemaker? This is not like going in and changing out a faulty airbag. This is in your chest. So again, if I've not got you worried yet, this is real. This is just one particular device. Many other medical devices, many energy devices. There's all kinds of vulnerabilities out there that need to be protected against in this, as more and more things be connected and as more and more become subject to attack. Next slide. Okay, so I was so worried about all of this. I went to the White House to talk about it in 2015 and discuss it with the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the Executive Office of the President, pointing out, saying, things are bad and they're getting worse. In fact, it's a disaster if they are not, if this is not addressed. Next slide. So to get through this conundrum, this challenge of many, many interconnected systems, devices, and resources that include a variety of vulnerabilities, if you have no map, you'll never get there. So we need to be thinking about how across the Internet of Things, many, many different ways of interconnecting devices and resources can lead to vulnerabilities, because we're seeing the hackers have incentives to find their way across these networks of devices and resources. There are, whether it's for a short sell, whether it's a true cyber attack, whether it's for theft, whether it's industrial sabotage, it's not we cannot make this assumption that it's all right for things to continue on the path they are for the Internet of Things. Because there are many, well, we just know there's malicious humans out there, and there's malicious non-person entities. So I'll pause on that phrase. Probably not many have heard the term non-person entities before, but that's a U.S. Department of Defense term for everything that's not a human. So it could be an application, it could be a device, it could be a document, it could be a video, it could be hardware, whatever. It's an entity, a non-person entity. So our model, which we've been evolving with all kinds of different players, you need to count for everything, because we know bots are out there. We know there's a malicious human. We know there's malicious applications, and if we're not organizing our everything we do to try to address all of those vulnerabilities, then by definition we're leaving doors open or windows open or vulnerabilities there to be exploited. So this, when I show this slide, my usual joke is it's self-explanatory. But okay, we'll pause for a moment here. But I promise I won't make it too painful. But what we're talking about is a model. Well, I will say this. I've never said this to people, but I did say this in the White House 2 years ago. So this is a model of everything that exists in the physical world and the virtual world is in this model. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty ambitious, academic, enormous model. But let me say that again. Nothing exists in the physical world or exists in the virtual world or can exist in either that is not in this model. So for cyber physical security going forward, whether it's exactly this model or something like it, you need to start from a comprehensive view of everything, physical and virtual, and all of its possible interconnections, because that's where the vulnerabilities are. So with this model, we can think about a new form of software, which we call edgeware, that connects, again, from edge devices to the cloud and can be used to wrap together and protect devices, infrastructure, content, us, humans, and other non-person entities. Which is work that we've been evolving here at Syracuse University and with the National Science Foundation, Partnership for Innovation and other programs for actually 15 years. This is a result of over 15 years of research, which is evolving to, next slide, to blockchaining the Internet of Things. So I think a lot of people, including many of my colleagues, were wondering, like, what is Lee so obsessed about? What is he doing? Well, now we can see with the vulnerabilities of the Internet of Things and blockchain technology, we can talk about a way to tie the things to a blockchain in a secure way that will integrate and automate the human-machine interaction and machine-to-machine interaction and an Internet of Things payment network for a machine economy. So we're evolving this work going forward still, and there's early commercial examples of some of the technology and applications, which I'll be waving it around a little bit later. But one possible example would just be, firmware upgrades across devices and networks where you're not sure, you don't have full confidence in all of the other underlying networks or resources. You can still trust and create new applications in a secure environment from cloud to edge. So yeah, so we're showing a picture, that volcano I was talking about, or showed at the opening slide. Allele there in the top has on his back a backpack that's like this. We call it an internet backpack. It was used last summer in emergency response. Ooh, I hear things falling now. Let's see. Well, so the backpack here comes in, open up. We'll just sort of show it, turn it to the camera. Which comes with a number of different devices, smartphones, a satellite antenna, these GoTennas. Let's see, pull it up one end. Oh yeah, okay. That's up so you can communicate across these few devices. You can connect across 11 different networks, including from satellite, including from the top of a volcano, including in the worst case scenario disaster. So no matter where you are in the world, no matter what's happening, no matter how bad the cyber attack is, there's another way we provide to communicate. So this technology has been trialed and is in live use in multiple countries now, including in New York City schools and by the Goma Volcano Observatory in Goma, next to that nasty looking volcano, for the obvious reason that that is a very dangerous place to live, and having improved emergency response for that community with limited current internet access is a clear and present danger. Next slide. Okay, so this just mentioned the Congo already. That same technology I include here is with the president of the former president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who won a Nobel some years ago. She has this set up and had it installed on her farm on Christmas Eve, actually. Got it fully installed for her neighboring community and school there. So now it's possible to connect and have connectivity from the remotest point wherever there is lacking communications capabilities from any rural area or in a disaster, depending on the circumstances. If you look to the slide, the picture to the right, I had to sneak in with a selfie with wearing a SU orange cap with, you can see the Nobel Prize. I don't get selfies with the Nobel Prize winner very often, but I happened to be at that event in September. We're working with the new president, George Weah's administration now to discuss further deployments and use of these Internet of Things, Internet backpack systems in Liberia. We're also in discussion preparing to blockchain the Internet backpack and its multiple networks. So in discussions with others, including the Internet Engineering Task Force and the Internet Society and colleagues. So we'll have further demonstrations, and I know that we'll be talking about this more. You'll be hearing more about this as we move forward. We have events coming up with Fordham University in April on blockchain, and the future where we'll be showing again, and at in Toronto with Harvard University in May as well. So we'll keep your eyes on Syracuse University and iSchool News, and there'll be further updates as this moves forward. I should emphasize how much Syracuse University and Syracuse University students have been part of this. There's several dozen iSchool students in the Digital Transformation Collaborative and with iConsult that have been contributing to and exploring this work, undergraduate capstone projects. Tim Kelly in the picture on the right handing the backpack to the president is a SU alum as well. And so there's but this involves many, many more colleges and universities and companies around the world. This is just highlighting one particular application of the Internet of Things that is coming along and is real. Okay. Okay, so that's one space. Another one that sort of overlaps, I mentioned the utility grid and the electrical grid. We're looking at all those Internet of Things vulnerabilities I talked about. Now think autonomous cars. Now think in manufacturing or industry 4.0. Now think about the home health devices and monitors and robotics. Everybody's talking about all of this. So I took out some slides in the interest of not overloading you all, but if we have some robots here, so I'll just use this slide and I'll go back to like what exactly this picture is about a moment. So we can think about good, bad, and evil robots. A good robot is actually one, maybe it has ethics, but it also has secure protection so that it can't be turned against us or its owners or its users. A bad robot would be like that 84% of Internet of Things. So a robot is just another Internet of Things device. The odds are it's going to be attacked, or in fact, we know it'll be attacked. So if it's like if it's built to the same software quality standards, and I'll be a little insulting here, as sloppy Silicon Valley, new startup, get it out fast, not worry about whether it's safe, not follow software design best practices, worry about all of the information assurance that you would need to take for any quality system to be designed, then you're going to have evil robots, because they weren't designed, they could be evil because they were designed by evil people, or it could be just a bad robot that's been taken over and remotely turned against itself. So this, in terms of things to worry about, again, we know, if you know how vulnerable Internet of Things is, and again, that's current data that I was sharing earlier, these are real concerns. We can't just talk about the happy talk of how great autonomous cars and autonomous vehicles are, when we already know the very first things, the first versions were being remotely hacked and hijacked from the second they got onto a test track. And 1.5 million vehicles were having to be recalled. So we have some real serious issues here that need to be thought about and need to be addressed. And if we just leave it to the usual best practices, quote unquote, and of Silicon Valley, that's not going to be nearly good enough for what we need. We need new research, we need new capabilities. Even if you don't buy my model, there has to be some way to do better than what we're doing. And this model here, this is something I'm proposing to my colleagues here at Syracuse University. You know, we're sort of planning on this, having multiple labs like this where students, you know, who should figure out how to do this better? Students should. Students should be playing with these robots, with these autonomous vehicles, monitoring their interactions, monitoring their electrical use, how to secure transactions across them. This is what we're about here at Syracuse in the iSchool, giving students the opportunities to explore the very leading edge and make real contributions here, whether it's through classwork or experiential learning. And that's exactly what you're looking at, is a picture of a proposed student lab that would mimic what a secure advanced micro would look like. So if you're going to engineer properly advances to the electrical grid in Puerto Rico or anywhere else, it would be more or less doing exactly what we're talking about here. So that's actually something that can be implemented on the scale of a classroom, a desktop, or a little larger than that. And students themselves can start helping solve these problems that maybe they're creating or we're creating as we move to this Internet of Things. I say, and if we do it without blockchain, how bad is it going to be? It's going to be worse. So we need to be thinking about blockchaining many of these systems to ensure that they can be trusted and secure and not subject to many cyber attacks and vulnerabilities. Next slide. So I'm getting into conclusions where I want to make sure we have time for discussion. And what we're highlighting here is the many new markets and opportunities that are coming from the blockchain technology and distributed resources, whether it's new trusted markets, new capabilities beyond just cryptocurrency, using these sessions and capabilities in many different vertical markets. It's also creating new needs for education and whether for businesses and firms and for universities like Syracuse University. I've already, I think, maybe convinced you that blockchain, Internet of Things without blockchain, and I say edgeware, can be evil. We know it can be very dangerous. So there's just a need as all these technologies go forward. Something like cryptography that was kind of esoteric and we could say was a specialized topic. All of us need to at least understand what its capabilities are and how it's being utilized. And many more people should be getting education, whether it's Syracuse University, the iSchool, at all different levels. Some of you may be interested in a certificate or returning for a master's. We would certainly welcome that, and we certainly welcome support and for our research and innovation. I want to just sort of highlight one more thing in terms of the novelty here. We have JD mentioned already that Syracuse University is, well, this is the first blockchain management course offered at any university anywhere in the world. There are courses on cryptography. There's other courses that cover some aspects of blockchain, but actually how to manage these resources, these technologies for enterprise. Syracuse University iSchool is the first one to be offering its students that capability to get hands-on experience across blockchain systems as part of their undergraduate and graduate education. We look forward to staying in that position and carrying forward. Even if you're not able to come to campus, and I'll do my last product placement for this, is my colleague and co-author, co-teacher, Richie Etwaru's book, Blockchain Trust Companies. This is, you don't have to come to Syracuse, you can just order it on Amazon. This is very accessible. It talks about the future of blockchain and how it can impact and create new business opportunities. The subtitle is, Every Company is at Risk of Being Disrupted by a Trusted Version of Itself. So when Richie's not with us, co-teaching, he's the Chief Digital Officer of IQVIA, the largest healthcare data company in the world. And so you can guess he's very involved in thinking through the very many different applications into healthcare and pharmaceuticals and the biomedical field of blockchain technologies. So I think I'm leaving ample time for discussion and dialogue of you, which is what I wanted to do. Last slide. I wouldn't be a proper academic if I didn't assign you further readings. So the top reference is to Government Accountability Office report on the Internet of Things from, again, 2017. I was one of the invited experts that contributed to the dialogue in 2016 and 2017, but again, maybe I'm biased because I contributed to it, but that chart I showed earlier was sort of essentially adapted from that. But honestly, I think it's the best look at Internet of Things technology that you can find. There's many different reports from all kinds of consulting firms, but just like with blockchain technology or cryptocurrencies, there's a lot of people that only have incomplete or partial understandings. I think that's the best overall view of Internet of Things technology. The next reference is to a paper that Richie and I contributed to on blockchain and IoT. So essentially, if you wanted to hear more on exactly what we talked about in this seminar, this webinar, there is a paper that we presented last fall talking about trusted commerce policy in this intersection of blockchain and Internet of Things. So that's a place where you can sort of dig deeper. And then the last one is, okay, now if you like that volcano or you want to know more about what we're doing to bring essentially innovation to some of the countries which have the most severe limitations right now, but on the other hand are open to innovation, we have a paper, Getting There From Here, in 2020 in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We are doing similar work with Liberia and other African nations, which are open to innovation, such as the Internet Backpack, such as blockchaining Internet of Things. We'll have probably have another announcement for an event in late March where the Internet Backpack and Syracuse students, iConsult students, will be contributing to a live event across, I think, 7 nations. So we'll keep you posted on that as well if you look back to the SU News site in the future. Thank you very much. I look forward to any questions you might have.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Lee. And I think we've got a lot of questions here, so let me just dive right into them. We have, the first one is somebody is looking for how they get more information about how they, as a student or as a professional, can work to fix the issues, the security issues, right? All the known ones and the ones we don't know about yet.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and there's a lot of the good news is there's a lot of resources out there. If you're out there as a professional, there's a Certified Information System Security Professional, or CISSP, certification program. That's just one I'll mention offhand. That's really good, and whether it's there's possibilities to start attending industry events, working on a certification process, or if you're able to, whether it's Syracuse University and the iSchool or other universities, wherever you are, we have a whole curricula. So if you're a graduate and looking just for a short program, getting a certificate in information security is also an option. So there's many possibilities, but if you, that's exactly what I'm saying, is we need many, there's a shortage of over 100,000 people. There's 100,000 jobs open for people that's the kind of people I'm talking about. And you know what? You get a good salary if you take this further education. So anybody out there thinking about, like, what should I do next? Be part of the solution. That's exactly what we need. We need more people stepping up to help solve this.
Another question. So you had mentioned the sloppiness of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
How do you get things to market then if you're too slow and you miss the window of opportunity?
Yeah. So that's the dilemma, is like, how do you be disciplined? So if you're doing things to military grade security standards, We all know notoriously how slow and over budget and prone to delay, getting like last generation technology out. So that's a very fair concern. Now we get to the however. If we go back to that chart of like blockchaining, well, can we flash to that? The blockchain chart? No. Okay. Well, so you all can remember that chart. So essentially, if you're using, we also have new cloud management courses. So if you're doing things properly with a software-defined data, essentially, if you're following best practices like the National Institute of Standards and Technology, like working with VMware, IBM, some of the big players, how often does Google Cloud's data centers get hacked? They don't get hacked because they have really good practices. So it's possible to do it really well with best current practices. We have courses on that as well. So if you design the proper clouds, data, or follow the best practices, stay within that environment, it's possible to maintain and produce quality product quickly. But it's true. It may be a little easier and it's a little faster, and not everybody's skilled on this kind of like current best practices. But if they're not, and you're rushing it out, and then it creates a new vulnerability, then that's still not, that shouldn't be acceptable. So actually, we're working on things like which will be outlawed. So some of this stuff will be literally criminal. I think it's criminal to be putting webcams that can't have their software update, their security software ever updated. And literally, those systems are into our U.S. grid right now, and there's a draft law at 1691 to make it illegal for them to purchase that. So some of this stuff is just bad and prohibited, and it's going to be bad corporate reputation if you're the producer of any of that stuff.
Okay. So can you, Rohit is looking, can you give an example of an application of both blockchain and machine learning?
Okay. So for the machine, let me say because of the money around cryptocurrencies, that's obviously been the first area of application for blockchain technology. So most of there aren't that many true applications that are out there live in the field at this time beyond the cryptocurrency space. There are projects where I guess I'll put this one in. So here's the biggest one I can think of right now would be IBM and Merrick for shipping logistics, where you taking advantage of Watson and sort of monitoring everything you can learn about the supply chain, the documentation of all of that. That was just announced. They've been working on that since 2016, so it's past pilot and just going to. So it's not yet commercially available. I think it was just announced within the last month. So I think that would be basically leveraging machine learning to optimize shipping supply chains.
So back over to the Internet of Things and connected devices for a minute. So what happens, if you've got one device in a network that becomes compromised? Shouldn't we be thinking in terms of network over and above the components within the network, the component devices?
So I kind of, I didn't spend as much time on that open specification model as I could have, but some of that was worked out working with the Enterprise Cloud Leadership Council, so essentially the Wall Street CIOs of the banks and Cisco several years ago, as they were thinking about bring your own device and the vulnerability. So let's just take this device as an example. Who knows? Do you know what I downloaded last night? Do I know what you did? Am I going to infect and take down Syracuse University network? Well, you know what? Working with those bank CIOs, we helped figure out how to do that, where you could just sort of assume. Let's assume I downloaded something I shouldn't. Okay, let's assume Syracuse University, we know this actually, the Syracuse University network is safe, but I'm not in a coffee shop. We can probably assume that network has somebody monitoring or somebody trying to steal passwords or something on it. So I got my device, I'm in a coffee shop, and I'm connecting to Syracuse University. So we're going from an insecure device, we have to assume the device is compromised. We have to assume the network is compromised. And if we architect things properly, you can still do everything I just said. You can still deliver the first users, the first people beneficiaries were, the usual, who gets things first? The billionaire. So the billionaire is being able to move $25 million from their compromised cell device over compromised networks. That can be done. That is being done. You're doing it already. And the enterprises assume there's these vulnerabilities. They know it, and they also know that their own system So just assuming you have some external barrier and you're going to keep all the bad things out, that's not the way things manage. You assume you have to be monitoring, again, using machine learning, you have to be monitoring your network and your devices all the time in case they start doing funny things like US and UK websites. I didn't manage to include this, but this is a perfect example. 5,000 US government websites and UK government websites, if you went and clicked on them to check on your disability information, your device would be helping mine cryptocurrency. So this, again, to make a real example, this is real news, this week's news of vulnerabilities tying Internet of Things and cryptocurrency together. So, and it's the US government and the UK government. So there's many vulnerabilities. If it's properly designed, you can sort of wall off and prevent one infection resource from compromising everything else. And here's one thing I'll say about this device. How far away does this phone get from me ever? Not very far. How far is your phone ever from? Not very far. Okay, well, we may not trust the device, but the device ID being tied to Lee McKnight personally, you know what? I have a pretty high confidence in that connection, just because my keys, my wallet, I might lose those these days, but nobody's losing these things very long, or they're in a complete panic because it's like your whole life is tied to it. So this identity information is very significant and can be used as an anchor to help tie and things, even if across insecure networks and devices.
So for this next question, we're going to go way back to the beginning of your presentation, more about the anonymity around blockchain. Yeah. So how can blockchain technology track users while at the same time keeping them anonymous?
So, there's many, remember, there's just 1,500 different cryptocurrencies, and there's many other blockchain implementations. So there's no way I can't pretend to be an expert on all of them. I'm not even close. And there's many different choices of how they're implemented. So let me just rewind to the proof of stake and proof of work blockchains just for a moment here. So Bitcoin, the first blockchain technology for cryptocurrency, and we've all heard about the miners. So what they're doing is solving very complex math problems, which earned them a new, a bit if they solve it first or get it. So there's sort of a risk-reward ratio there that leads to a new resource. For other crypto, so that's a proof of work. So you get to a new Bitcoin is created by doing that, by having the processors hijacking everybody else's machines and solving these math problems. You could have a proof of stake blockchain like the Maersk and IBM one. So if you're not Maersk, if you're not IBM, if you're not a registered shipping company, if you're not the customs agents, you can't get into that chain. You have no proof of stake. You have no identity. Remember what I was just saying about identity. So if you're not a secure registered identity, there's no way in. You have this super secure cryptography that makes it impossible to get in. So there's now within the space of proof of work or even cryptocurrencies are proof of work and have other mechanisms. So there's a variety of options there. Now getting that, so that's what I'm saying. In the proof of stake one, you know everybody's identity. It's not anonymous at all. Every single identity that's in is registered and known, or you can't get. The Bitcoin example is it's designed to be anonymous, and I'll get to the however. However, if you move over $10,000 of Bitcoin in the US and you don't tell IRS or the Treasury, you're money laundering and you're going to go to jail. However, if you're in New York State and you're following that bit license regulation and you're buying and selling cryptocurrencies and you didn't register, you're violating the law. So it's not anonymous. It's just it's mathematically possible to be anonymous, but whether it's legally possible depends on the individual jurisdiction, and then it also depends on the technical implementation whether you want anonymity. So the originators were looking to create this new anonymous, free of government space, and that's not really what's evolving. There'll be many more regulations whether it's either banned. Like India, China, South Korea are all looking. So basically, the cryptocurrencies are becoming less anonymous, and it's more of a myth about that. Because if people that believe that were, again, some of those, one of the first Bitcoin Foundation founding board members went to jail for money laundering. So don't do anything dumb. But basically, if it was illegal before Bitcoin, it's illegal with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies.
So looking at the blockchains that are currently being developed for specifically with the Internet of Things in
Yeah.
mind. Or, do you see any promise in the ones that are out there right now?
Well, there's again, this is sort of an early stage. There is a microgrid blockchain I'm thinking of for that a EU project, but I can't say that I have a laundry list of ones that I say that are ready to go. I'm heading into. I'm going to a dinner in Washington next month with Google, Facebook, Amazon, all kinds of federal government officials, talking about this energy and internet and secure communication space. So with the disasters and I'm also interacting with New York State and other officials. So I think just because of the vulnerabilities of the electrical grid and the utility grid, this is not this is far from just an academic discussion. Looking at blockchaining solutions to these communications and energy grid vulnerabilities, that's a real dialogue being held at a variety of levels. As I mentioned, there's already some legislation passing forward, and there's a number of different which exact blockchain implementation that might be tied to that. Would be different examples, but it's a little too soon to say how it'll shake out. But we look forward to, again, Syracuse University and the iSchool contributing to test beds and real examples of ways to resolve some of those vulnerabilities.
So just by registering IoT devices onto some kind of blockchain somewhere, how does that provide security for them if the security flaw still exists? Wouldn't they still be able to be hijacked?
Okay, so yeah, so there's if there's, again, we're getting into like fine details of the architecture, so you could be, depending on how we're going to be showing off this blockchain version of the Internet Backpack. We are architecting that now, and we'll be demonstrating that in the coming months. So it depends on what we think about the communication. So if you have an insecure system, but it's tied to but its identity, you know the identity of the device, right? So if you have that identity information, that typically, that sort of comes from its origins. So if you have this pre-existing identified information that you can trust, and then you're concerned about the data coming up off of it, you could be preventing that. You could be either saying it can't, just like with the blockchain, saying, remember what I just said, if it's inauthentic information, the blockchain itself could say, okay, that it looks like this device or some things behind it have been hijacked, and with machine learning or other processes, we do not accept that transaction. We do not let that record to get onto the blockchain itself. So that actually keeping things off the blockchain, that we can see that works, or you wouldn't have the cryptocurrency markets as they exist today. We can say that's verifiably true, that we can keep those the transaction secure. It's also true that we can't automatically resolve all of the device vulnerabilities if they haven't been for legacy devices. All you can do is sort of wall them off and sort of manage and monitor them. And then for the next generation devices, you can design them better, where there's sort of blockchain inside as a part of a secure information, I guess, a supply chain, data and information supply chain that would be less susceptible to vulnerabilities. But that's looking to the future. The present, we can just better manage and protect ourselves versus letting things gang up and attack us like we do now.
So I think this is going to be the last question here. We've only got about a minute left, so your answer is going to have to be pretty quick,
Sure.
But I think this one will lend itself to it. What do you think are the areas that show the most promise for this technology right now? Healthcare, appliances, or are all the industries kind of going to have a lot of opportunity?
Yeah, so this is, in my sincere belief, you mentioned, starting off, I've been sort of around a lot of innovations, and this is a very big one. This is going to change everything. All industries will be different with blockchain over time. It's just at this early stage where most people have just been looking at the very first area of application around finance. So I think supply chain, healthcare, energy, entertainment, we can go, any human activity will, I expect blockchain technology, having more trust between humans and information systems. Do we need that? Yes. Where do we need it? Everywhere. So I think it will be everywhere over time. Now, where is a transaction cost, and there's ways to do this badly. It's going to get early finance, healthcare, the energy sector is already mentioned. We know it's being played with for many, many other applications. Our own Syracuse University students have been using blockchain also for trading and monetizing game coins. So it's already getting success in entertainment and gaming amongst other areas. So you're going to see this everywhere. And I appreciate you all joining and participating in this webinar. Thank you very much.
Great, and thank you very much, Lee. And with that, that concludes our webinar. Thank you all for joining.